and welcome to this special interactive leader session, Meet the President-Elect Candidates. Thank you so much for joining us. I'm Pat Gould, Managing Director of Marketing and Communications at the Society of Actuaries. If you need technical assistance at any time today, click on the Live Technical Support button in the links area on the left-hand side of your screen, or you can send an email to SOA@compartners.com. You can also download a copy of the slides from the links box. And you can enter a question for the candidates at any time by clicking in the chat window in the lower corner of your screen. Be sure to click the send button on the right-hand side of the chat window to submit the question. I'd like to introduce the participants for today's session. We have Craig Reynolds, current President-Elect of the SOA. He will be moderating the discussion with our President-Elect candidates. And of course, we have our candidates, Jerry Brown, Mike Lombardi, Jim Glickman, and Tom Herget. I'll now turn it over to Craig, who will provide an overview on today's session.
Thank you, Pat. Good morning or afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. During this webinar, which we've extended from the original 60 minutes up to be 90 minutes long, we will be talking about the SOA elections, including the proposed bylaws amendment that SOA fellows will be asked to approve. But the bulk of our time is dedicated to you hearing directly from the four candidates for President-elect. The elections will open on August 17th and close on September 4th at 2 p.m. sharp Eastern Time. In this election, you'll be voting for the SOA board, including President-elect and section councils. As I mentioned, SOA fellows will be asked to consider an amendment to the bylaws that would eliminate the role of vice president. This is one move to reduce the overall size of the board of directors, which is currently 28. The board believes, and I strongly agree, that a smaller board size of 18 members will help the board strengthen its ability to make decisions and focus on important strategic issues. You'll be able to read more about the bylaws amendments in an upcoming Plain Talk email that will be coming shortly from SOA President Errol Cramer. The primary purpose of today's session is to learn more about the views of our President-elect candidates so you can make an informed decision when it comes time to vote. Let me start by explaining how today's session will work. We'll start off by having the candidates introduce themselves and briefly discuss their visions for their terms as President-elect and President. I'll then ask each candidate one question, and this question was shared with the President-elect candidates in advance. Each candidate will have 2 minutes to respond to this and all other questions. Then we will open it up for the question and answer portion of the session, where you are encouraged to submit your questions by typing them in the Ask a Question box and clicking Go. We also received some questions in advance of the webcast, and I'll be including some of these as well. When submitting questions, please do not direct your questions to a specific candidate. We want each candidate to have the opportunity to answer the same questions. I'm sure your candidates would be more than happy to respond to individual questions via email. So, let's go ahead and get started. Our first speaker introducing himself will be Tom Herget. Tom, please introduce yourself. You have 2 minutes.
Hi, this is Tom Herget, candidate for President-elect of the Society of Actuaries. I've been practicing in the field for nearly 45 years. After graduating from the University of Illinois with a major in actuarial science, I started work at the Hartford. After a few years, I returned to the Chicago area and worked for an accounting firm for 6 years, and then for another large insurer, CNA, for several years. I found my home at Poly Systems, an actuarial software firm where I worked in installation, sales, consulting, and project management. The clients ranged from the smallest local insurer to all 4G size. A typical engagement would be a PGAP project, trying to match a seller's appraisal without being able to see it. Also on the list was signing actuarial opinions, where the client actuary vacated in November. I served as an executive and co-owner in this firm. We were always challenged. We were successful at fulfilling the competing needs of shareholders, customers, and employees. It was an entrepreneur's dream. Because of the public nature of my responsibilities, I've stepped into nearly every life company in the U.S. I'm fortunate to have been engaged in Asia for some time. I've returned there many times to make presentations, visit universities, and see friends. Some of the volunteer work of which I am proudest is the creation of several textbooks, Insurance Industry M&A, and particularly 2 editions of U.S. GAAP for life insurers. While I did not pen the prose myself, I did manage a large group one of which included 4 future SOA presidents. Making this happen, leading 10 leaders, was far more difficult than writing it itself. These texts have generated well over $1 million for the Society, which has been reinvested into research to benefit members. I retired in 2008, but the retirement was unsuccessful. I re-entered the workforce and served 2 years as a mentor for a P&C academic research firm. I'm proud to say I took it from tiny to small. I enjoy volunteer work immensely. I like the contact with colleagues, the ability to help future generations, and to position the profession for the future. I do hope I'll be able to continue this work at the highest level as your PE of the SOA. Thank you.
Thank you, Tom. And now we have Mike Lombardi. Mike, please introduce yourself. You also have 2 minutes.
Hi, I am Mike Lombardi. I am currently president of my actuarial consulting firm, MLBC, which provides insurance companies with advice on business strategy, mergers and acquisitions, reinsurance, and corporate actuarial challenges. During my career, I have held senior executive positions in large U.S., Canadian, and U.K. organizations, including senior vice president at Prudential Assurance, executive vice president at RGA Reinsurance, and managing principal at Towers Watson. Like many actuaries, I stumbled into the profession by accident. I was good at math, but when I asked my teachers what I could do with it, I got the same answer as I got from my Latin teacher. I could always teach it to others. Later on, I was studying medicine and needed a summer job. That summer, I got an offer from an insurance company, and I learned what an actuary was, and I've loved the profession ever since. In terms of volunteering, I started doing so shortly after achieving my fellowship. I joined an exam committee, and having caught the volunteer bug, I followed that with over 30 years of extensive volunteer work on committees, sections, and boards. I was eventually elected president of the Canadian Institute of Actuaries. Later on, I ran for and was elected a vice president of the Society of Actuaries. I've written articles and made presentations at insurance industry events and SOA meetings. I've also presented to many different actuarial institutes, associations, and societies spanning 5 continents and 20 countries. Now I am running for president-elect and seeking your vote to further my vision for the SOA.
Thank you, Mike. Next up is Jim Glickman. Jim, please introduce yourself. You also have 2 minutes.
Hello, my name is Jim Glickman. For the past 27 years, I've been the president and CEO of Life Care Assurance Company. Immediately prior to this position, from 1982 to 87, I worked for PennCorp Financial as a vice president, managing the life and health pricing and reinsurance departments. From 72 to 81, I worked first at CNA and then at successfully higher positions at Macabees Mutual and Pacific Standard, primarily as a life pricing actuary. Originally, I became interested in the actuarial field, where as a junior in high school, my dad, a general agent for Connecticut General at that time, invited Paul Campbell, one of Connecticut General's actuaries, to our home for dinner during one of his visits to my dad's agency in Chicago. I was immediately hooked on becoming an actuary and began taking exams my senior year. Ever since, I have been focused on the opportunities within the actuarial profession. My volunteer activities with the Society of Actuaries began in 1984, primarily by being a volunteer speaker at both SOA spring and annual meetings. Since then, I've made over 50 presentations at national meetings, with more than half of those for the SOA. My volunteer activities accelerated significantly in 1999 when I became the founding chairperson of the LTC section, as well as its chairperson during my first and 5th years on the LTC Section Council. Then in 2000, I helped establish the annual LTC Broker World Survey, now in its 16th year, serving as its author from 2001 through 2004. Also in 2000, I helped establish the annual Intercompany Long-Term Care Insurance Conference, which has grown from an initial attendance of only 250 for its first conference in 2001 to well over 1,000 people at the 15th annual conference this past March. Then in 2005, I was elected to the SOA board, and then in 2008, re-elected to serve as an SOA board vice president. Also in 2005, I became one of the founding board members of the ILTC Conference Association, and have served as its volunteer executive director ever since. I've been married to my wife, Marlene, for 39 years this month, and we have 3 sons, Steve, Mark, and Robert. Mark, my middle son, and his wife, Sharda, both FSAs, now have a son of their own, Samuel, who was born just 2 weeks ago on July 21st.
Thank you, Jim. And finally, we have Jerry Brown. Jerry, you also have 2 minutes to introduce yourself.
My name is Jerry Brown. I retired a few months ago after working 39 years as an actuary. After graduating from WPI with a math degree, I spent 18 years at what was then State Mutual in Massachusetts. When I left the firm, I was a senior actuary of the company with actuarial responsibilities across all lines of business. Next, I spent 3 years in Milliman's Boston office working on a wide variety of life and health assignments. And I just completed 18 years as Executive Vice President and Chief Actuary of Mutual of America in New York City. I was part of the executive management teams and the appointed actuary for both Mutual of America and State Mutual. I've been volunteering for the actuarial profession nearly nonstop since I became an FSA in 1980. Initially, I was writing exam questions and grading those exams, later served as vice chair, chair, currently a general officer for professionalism, and I'm now on the Education Executive Group. I also chair the committee that oversees the Associateship Professionalism course and the Fellowship Admissions course. I've facilitated at more than 40 FACs, serving as course director more than 30 times. Running FACs has been by far the most rewarding experience, volunteer experience I've had to date. I'm currently a member of the SOA board. I've also served on the Academy's Life Practice Council as the ASB liaison, on the Academy's Council on Professionalism as the SOA liaison. I served several years on the ASB's Life Committee, including 3 years as chair, and I'm currently on the ASB's General Committee. I do believe I have the work and volunteer experience necessary to lead the SOA. On a personal note, I've been married to my wife, Sue, for 40 years. We have 4 children and 3 grandchildren. Now that I'm retired, I plan to spend more time playing tennis, skiing, hiking, gardening, traveling, of course playing with my grandchildren, and volunteering for the actuarial profession. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone, for those introductory remarks. As I said earlier, one question was given to the candidates in advance, so they've had time to consider their response. We'll start with that question, and Mike Lombardi will answer first. The question is simply, what would you do as an ambassador for the society, both for, within, and beyond the actuarial profession? Mike, please share your comments.
Thank you, Craig. When I was president of the CIA and later on executive vice president at RGA, I performed a similar ambassadorial role. I met with leaders of many actuarial organizations and non-actuarial organizations throughout the world. Successful ambassadorship to me means frequent communication, relationship building, and mutual trust and respect. So what should be our message to external audiences? It's to increase awareness of the value of the SOA credentials and to promote actuaries as trusted advisors and leaders in the measurement and management of financial risk. To achieve that means reaching out to key stakeholders and other centers of influence, communicating our key message, and discussing other topics of mutual interest. However, building personal relationships is not enough. Presidents will come and go. Lasting value will only come if we focus on building ongoing institutional relationships as well. Now, with respect to relationships within the actuarial profession, this is without a doubt a key priority of mine, if not the key priority. Let me explain. The U.S. actuarial organizations used to work harmoniously, but that relationship has been severely damaged. Now our actuarial leaders are talking to each other through press releases and lawsuits. I believe the leaders of other actuarial organizations are equally embarrassed by this infighting and would welcome a way out to a win-win solution. But it's not going to be easy. To get there, 3 things have to happen. First, we need to reestablish trust. Secondly, leaders and eventually the boards of the organizations need to be talking directly to each other about our differences and common goals. And third, most importantly, all of us, including the SOA, need to be willing to make compromises for the good of the profession. I'm ready, willing, and able to start this process.
Thank you. We'll now give a turn to Jim to respond. Thank you.
I have actively been participating as an ambassador on behalf of the actuarial profession for most of my 43 years working as an actuary. Whether I'm speaking to a national insurance industry audience, the media, a group of math students at a university class, or just a passenger sitting next to me on a flight who is wondering what their math-oriented teenager should consider for a career, I'm always out there promoting the opportunities which becoming an actuary can provide. A career, by the way, that I often point out has given me opportunities I would not otherwise have enjoyed. If I am elected, I would expect to have an expanded opportunity to act as an ambassador for the actuarial profession in my role of president-elect and then as president. In that role, I would likely be speaking to much wider audiences, often consisting of people who are neither actuaries nor insurance industry professionals. I would expect this to occur largely due to my somewhat unconventional career path as an entrepreneur. As the founder of LifeCare, which has grown from $3 million of borrowed capital into a $2 billion insurance company with over $500 million of GAAP equity, I suspect that my story may be of interest beyond actuarial organizations here and abroad, and even beyond the industries that actuaries traditionally serve. In fact, this opportunity to discuss my story may well make it into the mainstream media, where I may have the opportunity to promote an actuarial career, not only as a highly skilled technical profession for insurance and pension firms, but also as a profession that can provide insights for many other industries.
Thank you, Jim. Jerry, it is now your turn to respond.
My first ambassadorial task would be to attend to my highest priority, which is to improve our relationships with the other organizations, particularly the Academy and the CAS, but also with the other organizations, including the CIA. I've already reached out to many Academy board members, as well as the incoming Academy president. We agree that this is a necessity to improve these relationships and move our profession forward. I've also spoken to some CIA members about their concerns. We need to find areas where we can collaborate with the other organizations as well. I would support collaborating with the CAS, for example, on research in data analytics and predictive modeling that could help both health and general insurance actuaries. Outside the profession, I would support education and research that will expand the areas where actuaries can apply their skills to improve financial security for society and create new employment opportunities for actuaries. Today, the supply of new college graduates with actuarial degrees exceeds the number of new actuarial jobs. We can and should do more to address this. I will speak with business leaders, spreading the message about the capabilities that actuaries possess. I would strongly promote the idea of actuaries working in non-traditional roles.
Thank you, Jerry. And Tom, it's back to you.
Thank you, Craig. For beyond the actuarial profession, I want to represent the society in two areas. One, diversity. The SOA is looking at the investments it can make or the programs it can undertake to achieve the greatest impact on diversity in the actuarial profession. I would like to be a significant contributor in this outreach. Second, I want to initiate an education effort to arm non-pension actuaries with the ability to explain the issues underlying the public pension crisis. A major element of the solution to this crisis will be action demanded by not just the politicians, but the participants in these plans. These people need to be made aware of the issues. We need more actuarial salespeople. Or within the profession, I will wear my ambassador sash as we nurture relationships with other organizations in other parts of the world. In particular, for organizations, the Academy, the CAS, the International Actuarial Association, and the Caribbean Actuarial Association. For these organizations, I have been either on committees, on programs, or on boards. I've made many friendships with current board members as well as influential individuals. And I intend to get to know the Canadian Institute of Actuaries and the British, the IFOA, leadership better. For geographic areas, I have been presenting the research of the Society in Japan, Korea, Taiwan, China, Hong Kong, Singapore, and Thailand. I will continue to do so, and I hope to inaugurate our outreach efforts in Colombia, Chile, Argentina, and Brazil. Thank you.
Thank you, Tom. Let's now move on to some other questions, and please remember you can submit questions throughout the webcast. We'll be rotating who goes first as we move through these questions, and the first question will therefore go to Jim Glickman. Jim, the SOA will soon begin development of the 2017 to 2020 strategic plan. What are your thoughts on particular items to incorporate into that plan, and are there any specific areas you want to focus on?
Thank you, Craig. Yes, I have some very specific ideas of things that I would like to do for the 2017 strategic plan. First and foremost, I think what we need to do is that we need to go back to our educational and research roots. that we should supplant the other organizations, think of what's best for the actuarial profession as a whole, and not take a competitive attitude towards the other organizations. I particularly would like to see us work with them to be the educational and research source, but not compete with them or their members to become our members and perhaps drop their current memberships. Also, I think it's very important that we take a strategic look at how we can best serve the members. In particular, I think there should be an attitude that follows our tagline of risk is opportunity. And by that, what I mean is that we should look at all areas where we can make the experience for members better, even if there's a risk that it takes more work and requires continual follow-up to get there. A number of opportunities are immediately available to serve the newer FSAs, to serve the retiring FSAs, to serve the people who do continuing professional development, and in our whole CPD in attendance programs.
Thank you. Jerry, your question.
Thanks, Craig. There is a task force currently working on the development of the strategic plan. And I think that group ought to make sure they bring in the idea of as many people as possible. So meeting with members, surveying members, finding out what our interests are. I think we all agree that one of the most important things will be to maintain our real strength, which the Society of Actuaries is one of the premier education and research associations for actuaries. And I think that will be our first and foremost in developing that strategic plan. Certainly maintaining the strength of our credential, the reputation of our credentials, all SOA credentials will be very, very important. And I think that strategic plan ought to include emphasis on finding new opportunities for actuaries. There's a lot of other things actuaries can do besides the traditional insurance, employee benefits, social insurance, those sorts of things. There are many other ways that actuaries can apply their trade, and we ought to make sure that the strategic plan addresses that as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Jerry. Tom, it's now your turn.
Okay, coming up for 2017 and later, first of all, we need to focus on relationships. We need to get back to working positively with our peers. Secondly, I think we're going to have to address the mutual recognition concept. Many other organizations would like to be able to exchange credentials with us. I think that's a challenge for us. We need to be very cognizant of this need. Some organizations are more advocate as well as educationally oriented, and just exchanging credentials will be quite an issue, so we have to deal with that. I think our current education and research abilities are fantastic. We need to continue to do that. We just can't take that for granted. And finally, I think we really need to focus on opportunities for actuaries outside our traditional fields. Can we go into banking? Can we go into predictive modeling? Can we go into other areas, energy? Can we find home for our actuaries? We need to make resources, financial and people, available to do this. Thank you.
Thank you, Tom. Mike, it's your turn.
With respect to the planning for the next cycle of the SOA's plan, I think we should be looking at the trends, and we are. And we see out there changes in regulations, demographics, the economies of concern, and in addition, I think that the opportunities for actuaries need to be looked at again. We need to widen our scope. For example, data analytics, I think we should own that space. We've got the skills and abilities to add value there. Similarly with ERM, and also with respect to at least analyzing climate change indexes and volatility. I also think we should continue to make use of our volunteers. We've got a good volunteer base, and it's important that we catch our volunteers early. And I would encourage micro-volunteering, for example, allowing young new FSAs that might have other commitments to make a smaller commitment, but at least get a start within our organization. I think we should also take another look at how actuaries are viewed out there in the world. Our image needs improvement. Our strengths are that people view actuaries as ethical and as problem solvers. However, they also believe that we have some difficulty communicating, and our visibility within the hierarchy of organizations is very low. Other places we can look at is international. We need to be increasing the reach of our credentials, especially in global companies, so that the value of our credentials can be appreciated. And lastly, we should be collaborating with other organizations. The China Actuarial Association Memorandum of Understanding is an example of that. I think we should do more of those.
Thank you. So the next question, we will start with Jerry. Jerry, the SOA is a U.S.-based international organization with strong ties to Canada and with a fast-growing membership in other countries, notably China and the rest of Asia. What are your views on the benefits and risks of expanding beyond North America, and what should the SOA do to best serve this growing membership?
Well, clearly, the areas beyond North America are a very, very important part of the SOA. Currently, 5 of our 10 largest exam centers are in Asia, so there's clear indications that we've got growing membership and will continue to grow overseas. The problem is I don't think we offer enough programs to support those members. We're very good with continuing education and all those sorts of things in the U.S., but we have time zone differences and travel differences with Asia, and we need to find ways to do that by getting more people on the ground, for example, in China and in Hong Kong, where we have maintained the joint office. The benefits are strong in that there's just huge numbers there, so we can't ignore it. We need to find ways to get volunteer opportunities for members outside of North America. That's just a way they can become a greater part of the fabric of the profession. They can contribute, and they can get a lot out of volunteering for the SOA. So in short, I think it's particularly important that, and in fact, one of the 4 things I think is most important that the SOA address going forward is servicing that group and making sure we continue to grow throughout Asia and other parts of the world. Thank you.
Tom, it's now your turn.
Thank you, Craig. I think our presence in Asia is very important not only to ourselves but to the residents of the countries out there. We are increasing our ability to support these people. We have just expanded our ability to service them by creating 2 new committees, a China committee focusing only on the mainland, and a Greater Asia committee to address the needs of other outlying countries and environments. You've seen our logo change. We no longer are sporting the eagle and maple leaf. The new triangle recognizes that we are truly an international organization. The benefits of this is that not only will we be helping the profession and the society in the Asian countries with quality actuarial education, but we've also been able to import, frankly, a surprising amount of residents from Asia to be working here in the United States, bringing their beliefs and viewpoints to us, a greater way, a better way of looking at things. So I think it's very exciting that we expand over the Pacific and look forward to continuing that growth effort. Thank you.
Thank you, Tom. We'll now yield the floor to Mike.
Thank you. International is a passion of mine, and I think it should be for the Society of Actuaries as well. Why do I say this? Because it provides greater opportunity for actuaries to work in global companies, and it increases the reach of our credentials. It also provides greater opportunity for our credentials to be recognized, allowing actuaries to work in different countries. And with the SOA being a premier provider of actuarial services, I believe we can help in many ways, both on our own and together in collaborations with others, such as the IAA. What ways can we help? Well, we can do joint marketing. We could also help with creating local exam content, continuing education. We can provide on-the-ground resources, as we do currently in Southeast Asia and Canada. But I would caution, we need to pick our spots carefully and work with other actuaries. For example, we have a memorandum of understanding with the China Actuarial Association, and Asia is a growing market, so that's an area we should focus. Perhaps Latin America is another area we could look at. But in all cases, we should think first about working with others if others are on the ground there, and if nobody is serving the actuarial profession, then we can go it alone.
Thank you, Mike. Jim, now your turn.
I think that the society needs to be very careful to try to focus its international development on two areas. One is, of course, companies that operate worldwide and supporting them, both their actuaries here and abroad. But two is in providing the education, research, and continuing education activities for the companies that don't have a sufficient actuarial organization of their own to provide that service. I think that where we need to be very careful is to not try to replace those organizations that exist even in their infancy in the new countries we go into, especially from the standpoint of creating a competitive situation between them and us. I do think we have a lot to offer. I think we have a lot that we can develop for those international organizations, but I think we need to be very careful how we proceed.
Thank you, Jim. Now we're back to Tom to take the next question. Tom, the SOA has developed a general insurance or property casualty track. How would you measure the success of this program, and what do you think the SOA should do to make it successful?
Thank you, Craig. I'd say our actual to expected is just a little bit low. We didn't expect to conquer the world right off the bat with our new syllabus, but the numbers are a little bit low. I think we need to do a couple things. One is to convince potential employers of these actuaries that they are great candidates, great people, well-educated, and that would probably call for personal visits to employers of P&C actuaries. I think, though, the biggest hurdle to our success right now is the lack of accreditation for being able to sign a P&C statement. I think that is the biggest concern for the GI track, and I also think it's the last remaining stumbling block before we can resume normal relationships with both the CAS and the Academy. So I think we really need to focus on resolving that issue this coming year, and then many, many things will fall into place. Thank you.
Thank you, Tom. Mike, it's your turn.
I think I agree with Tom with respect to getting employers focused on this, and also getting that signature legally binding or whatever. This is actually a complicated question, and we need to appreciate that there's ongoing friction with the CAS. The question was, how do we measure success? I guess that depends on what the goals were. You can look at it in several different ways. If we want to If the goal was to offer a choice and have another route or competitive way to get into the CAS field for a candidate, that's one measure of success. You can consider like different universities offering same degrees, for example. By the way, that can be collegial and civil and competitive at the same time. If the question is we're doing this to fill a gap internationally where we would otherwise lose members, then that's another way to look at success. And lastly, another way to look at success is financial. Is this a self-supporting initiative? My view is that success is not just based on numbers alone. We need to sit back and view this in the bigger context. What are we trying to do? We're trying to enhance the value of the SOA credentials and of actuaries. We want to be providing members with additional opportunities for growth and employment. And we also want to make sure that we're growing the profession as a whole. Can we find common grounds with the Casualty Actuarial Society? Maybe. If you stand back, it shouldn't be impossible. The SOA has scale, technology, and volunteers. The CAS has seasoned actuaries and lots of practical experience. We could conceivably be working together, especially internationally, on a cost-sharing and revenue-sharing basis, and have a deal that meets both our goals.
Thank you, Mike. Jim, it's now your turn.
Thank you. There's been a lot of discussion here today about repairing the relationships with the other organizations. I think that we can take a step forward, perhaps by taking a step back. I think what we should do is go to the CAS and suggest a proposal where we would go back to providing the education, but let the CAS provide the designation. Allow them to continue to work with the government organizations in terms of the certifications and not essentially threaten their existence, which is a natural byproduct of competing with them for membership. On the other hand, I think we should ask them in areas where they don't want to participate, particularly in international areas, that we do use that education system with those international candidates in the general insurance area, and assuming that they're not looking to service and or designate them, that we then allow them to get the FSA designation through that education process. I think this would be quickly endorsed by the CAS, and I think it would repair our relationships immediately and help repair them, for that matter, with the Academy as well.
Thank you, Jim. Jerry, it's your turn.
Thanks, Craig. I think one way we can measure success is by the number of people who are involved with the general insurance program. I think right now we have about 80 people that have taken one or more components of the GI track. So I think that's a pretty good start for something that's been up and running for such a short time. Of course, we do need to continue to promote this. I actually am part of an SOA outreach effort to visit some property casualty companies. The week after next, I'll be visiting with SOA education and communication staff, talking directly with some insurers and trying to get their view on what they think of our track and how we can improve it and what will take to make that track be successful. Certainly the NAIC recognition is a very strong, it's an absolute necessity for the track, I believe, and I think we also need to get recognition in China, Hong Kong, even the Caribbean, other markets, so that is a valid certification so you can sign an annual statement. The SOA does have an outstanding team of volunteers and staff that are developing these exams and working on continuing education, and I think as we build more continuing education programs to support our general insurance actuaries, that will help the track as well. Certainly as far as benefits, there's a very real growing need for insurance in Asia and other parts of the world where more and more of a growing middle class has greater and greater insurance needs. And they're going to be looking for insurance products, and it's going to require more actuaries to do that. And we can and should be an important part of producing general insurance actuaries to address those needs. Clearly, it's part of our growth in Asia strategy to have more general insurance actuaries, and that will help appeal to the audience that we have there, our membership there. Thank you.
Okay, for our next question, we'll be going to Mike first. Mike, what role can the profession in general and the SOA in particular play in responding to public policy issues such as the public pension funding crisis and healthcare reform?
I think we as actuaries pride ourselves with our model demonstrating facts for appearances and substituting facts for appearances and demonstrating demonstrations for impressions. Often the voice of the actuary is missing in public policy matters, and we want the public to turn to us with respect to objective advice, which is unbiased and expert. But we also need to leverage this with other actuarial organizations, such as the Academy, and make sure we have a better product. So my view on public policy is that, yes, we should make our views known, with two caveats. If the views fall within the domain of actuarial competence and are generally accepted by members, then there's no problem. We can certainly publish that and make it known. But on the other hand, if our views are more in the nature of lobbying and public advocacy, my view is that we should be working with the Academy and the CIA respectively, because that is the role that they're best suited to play.
Thank you, Mike. And now I'll yield to Jim.
Thank you. I believe that we need to look at all of these projects, including the pensions, from the standpoint of the actuarial profession responding, and that we are well equipped to do a lot of the back research and education, and we should be forming joint task force. I will give an example of one that happened back in the long-term care arena approximately 6 years ago. When the Class Act was part of the ACA, what happened is that Congress had suggested that there was going to be a voluntary, subsidized, but not sustainable program. And what happened is that the Academy, being so busy with the health elements, the long-term care section actually took on the role of providing all of the back office research, getting the model set up, modeling out what the prices would need to be, and sent that over to the Academy to put together an issue brief which was distributed to Congress. That brief actually changed the legislation to require it be self-supporting and eventually led to its repeal. I think doing the same type of project in the pension area, with the help, obviously, of ASPA, and then turning it over to the Academy and the CIA to help push out to the regulators and the other people who will have to make public policy, is the best way to approach this. As long as we don't require that we get credit, but that we just work for the betterment of the actuarial profession, I think we'll get the best result and have the best partnerships with the other organizations.
Thank you, Jim. And now, Jerry, it is your turn.
The SOA does have strong research capabilities that we can leverage in the public policy areas. We do, I think, in my opinion, need to partner wherever possible, certainly if it's for U.S. policy, with the Academy. We want to make sure we're not duplicating any efforts, and certainly a number of the disagreements and the difficulties in our relationships with the Academy have been over in the public policy area, where we probably have not coordinated as well as we could have and should have. With the U.S. elections coming around, including with their own debates this evening, Social Security, Medicare will be every bit as much on the forefront as public pension plans and the health care issues. And the SOA can and should be a very valuable source of information. Certainly when we did the Blue Ribbon Panel report, we were very well received in Washington. We were a source of information. We weren't pushing for any one position or another, but simply highlighting these are the issues and these are the things that Congress needs to be aware of. But I do think we need to be an information source and not in any way, shape, or form a lobbying force. We simply need to inform on public policy and let others leave the lobbying to others. Thank you.
Thank you, Jerry. Now, Tom, I believe it's your turn.
Thank you very much. I believe that the Academy and the CAA should continue to be the voice to the public about these issues, and the Society and the CAS continue to provide resources and research to support the opinions. The Academy has a sales force. They've got the procedures to issue opinions to make sure they don't conflict with prior opinions or other areas. It's an infrastructure that we just don't have here at the Society. And I think we should follow the lead of the Academy. Should we do research and sell it and promote it? I would think only if there's a petition process where the CAA or the Academy explicitly declines to do some research, then I think we would have a green light to do it and try to sell it. But I would like to go back to the way things were 10 years ago and let the voice be heard from Washington or Ottawa or Toronto. Maybe, Mike, you know which one. Thank you.
Thank you, Tom. The next question will start with Jim. Jim, some have said that the demand for actuaries is in danger of declining if we maintain a narrow focus on traditional actuarial jobs in the insurance and benefits industry. What are your thoughts on this matter, and what would you do to mitigate the risk? And in particular, do you believe this is an activity for the SOA to pursue in isolation, or is this something you would pursue jointly with the other actuarial organizations?
Thank you, Craig. Actually, I think the best way to go at this is really kind of through a different process. We currently have some people within the society whose mission is to make media contacts. I think we should focus, especially many of our experts in our different sections, on utilizing that media outlet and trying to get it in the mainstream outside of our actual current industry publications and into the ones that the public reads, that other industries read, and establish the ability of actuaries to solve some of those problems in those other areas. By getting that media exposure out there, I think some of those industries will start to think of how they can use actuaries rather than us trying to go at it from the standpoint of trying to develop those jobs for actuaries. Also, I think we will get a much higher talent pool moving into the actuarial profession and taking the exams as well, since they will clearly see there's an opportunity to develop a lot more than just insurance and pension skills.
Thank you, Jim. Jerry, it's your turn.
I think there is an excess supply of new. I think research shows that we recently collaborated with the CAS and perhaps others on some research on the supply and demand for actuaries. And I think the research shows that there's an oversupply of very young actuaries and almost an undersupply of kind of mid-career actuaries. I do think we should dedicate more research to find new areas where actuaries can work. Certainly data analytics, predictive modeling, big data, those sorts of things come to mind where actuaries really can apply their expertise and using that find new opportunities where they can work. Should we pursue these efforts, promotional efforts, jointly with others? Absolutely. We have a common interest with all of the other actuarial organizations, whether it's here in the U.S., in Canada, in Asia, in the Caribbean, or anywhere else, to work with others to promote the value that actuaries can bring to business solutions. Thank you.
Thank you, Jerry. Tom, I'll yield to you.
Yes, I think we can see what is happening in several other countries. Australia, the insurance market imploded, causing a diaspora of actuaries around the world. You'll find actuaries in Basel, London, Chicago from Australia. They've been able to adapt to their new environment and go into other industries. And I don't think we need to wait to see anything like that here in the U.S. before we can make that happen. In South Africa, they've been able to penetrate banking. It's like a practice area there. Why can't we? So there is a growing supply, and I think if we encourage young people to take actuarial exams, we have an obligation to make sure there's a market for them once they finish their education. So I'm all for expanding the opportunities for actuaries. Here at the Society, I've been trying to get us to add 8 people for this effort. Of course, that's a little bit exaggerated, but I'd be happy if we get 3 or 4 salespeople to bring us forward on this. And I think we'll get some of those for next year. Should we promote this alone or with others? It would be great to have the support and interest of others. I think we are actually moving quickly right now, probably just because there's fewer people involved and less committee meetings. So that's my views.
Thank you, Tom. Mike, your turn.
Actuaries are and should be the leading profession in the measurement and management of financial risks. And there's a lot of areas where we can work both individually and collectively. Success will demand a combination of top-down and bottom-up initiatives. What do I mean by bottom-up initiatives? This is the individual level. You know, when an individual actuary performs well and an employer or board takes notice, we shine through reflected glory as an organization. And individual actuaries can help by pioneering as well in new fields and expanding the borders or boundaries of actuarial skills and practices. And there's lots of opportunities in ERM, predictive modeling, big data, capital markets for individuals to go out and make their mark. And individual efforts will mean continuing to grow and learn. Now, collectively as well, which is part of the question, the SOA, alone and with other organizations, can work and help stabilize the balance between supply and demand. This will include looking at marketing efforts, not just to existing employers, but seeking out new employers and making them aware of the value of the actuarial credentials. It means media training. We should be training our key people to speak out to other audiences and make them aware of the profession. It also means research. We could do grants or fund universities and others to expand the borders of the actuarial profession. And then finally, we should be partnering with other organizations, not just actuaries, but organizations involved in finance or statistics or risk management, and we should consider joint meetings. Lastly, the IAA, for example, is putting together a report on the global state of the actuary profession, and we should contribute to that as well.
Thank you, Mike. Next question will go to Jerry. Jerry, the SOA provides world-class training, both examination and professional development, as a core competency. Do you feel the SOA is keeping up with fast-paced change in the world? And what are your ideas for ensuring the SOA effectively delivers knowledge to its candidates and members that is both relevant and timely?
Thanks, Craig. I have been involved, as you know, in education as a volunteer since 1980, and I've worked in a wide variety of things. I'm very dedicated to this area. One of the things we're just starting and getting underway now is a review of the ASA curriculum. And our definition of ASA is what every actuary should know regardless of practice area. And we're looking at all the key questions of what should an actuary know, how can the SOA test it, what's the best way to deliver that information, and how can we assess whether or not the actuaries have mastered that material. I think this sort of thing will really help keep our credential relevant. The IAA is changing or updating its definition of what a fully qualified actuary is, and we want to make sure that our curriculum does in fact follow that. Our ASAs are, in IAA definitions, fully qualified actuaries. We also recently finished the Learning Strategies Task Force, of which I was a member, which came up with a number of initiatives to do exactly the sorts of things you described, to make sure that we do have world-class training, to make sure we do have the best of the best in all of both our assessment methods, our education methods, and our educational offerings. But there is more we can do. We always have to stay on top of the efforts to continue to improve them, and I think as the various initiatives of the Learning Strategies Task Force unfold, there'll be more of that, and I think it will be effective. Thank you.
Thank you, Jerry. And now, Tom, it's your turn.
Thank you. I agree with Jerry that we're doing a fantastic job in attempting to stay up to date, if not get ahead of educational trends. We've got our the looking at the definition of what goes into the ASA curriculum. We've got the Learning Initiative. I am most impressed with our continuing education programs that we offer to practicing actuaries. We've got a dynamic group of people that look into that and keep on top of it. A lot of this comes from the sections, younger members who are practicing day to day, who know what needs to happen. They're able to identify, along with the staff partners, what the key issues are today and what they're likely to be tomorrow. We can recruit great faculties. We have good oversight groups. I sort of drool over the opportunities members have to continue and advance their profession, and we're not going to lose that. Thank you.
Thank you, Tom. Mike, it is your turn.
Well, I'm going to be agreeing with everything that Tom and Jerry said as well. I'll say this, though. I think reviewing the scope of what an actuary needs to know on a regular basis is very healthy for the profession, and I think we do a pretty good job of that. And so keeping the syllabus up to date, reviewing the curriculum is to be encouraged. One thing I would caution, though, is we need to make sure that the curriculum is not done by an inside group of volunteers alone, but that we are reaching out to all the interest groups, stakeholders, centers of influence. So I would include and make sure that we are getting the voice of the employers, our broad member base, regulators, and universities and others.
Thank you, Mike. Jim, it's your turn.
Yes, I have a very strong opinion on CPD, and in particular, I think the way to get current and important information out to the people who need to know about it is to go through the sections. During the year that someone is president-elect, one of the tasks is to chair the section of council chairs. And through that process, I would encourage all of them to develop programs that are specialized to their particular section memberships that will provide up-to-date current CPD and provide it without cost. One of the things that happened when I was on the board was the CPD requirement was passed. And during that time period, there was a lot of discussion about whether or not this was going to be an income revenue-generating reason for doing CPD, or whether this was to keep the credential up-to-date and recognized as being so. And I think there's been a little bit too much emphasis so far on creating the revenue side of this. I think that that whole CPD programming, which should be centered out of the sections, should be oriented towards providing that in the least expensive way possible so that the most number of members will benefit from its existence. I also believe that there should be many more in-person type events through the different sections that are oriented towards their section membership, but also oriented towards non-actuaries who would be interested in their section areas. And the long-term care section, the reinsurance section have been two very good examples of that area. But obviously there are many other sections that could also implement those types of programs and create a lot of real-world experience that will be very up-to-date.
Thank you, Jim. Now we're coming back to Tom for the next question. As a reminder, we're approximately an hour into our session now. We have about 30 minutes to go in our expanded format. Tom, while it is critical that employers continue to value our skills, we must ensure we're able to attract motivated and engaged individuals who are eager to learn and to apply their newfound skills. What do you think the SOA should be doing to build better, more informed relationships with university students and candidates as they begin to make career decisions?
Thank you, Craig. Interesting question. I'd like to focus on the employers more. They obviously create the demand for people coming out of college, and as you know, there's really a lot of candidates coming out. So I think we need to educate the employers, to the extent they don't already know, in just what all the actuary does bring to the table. More than just mathematical calculations. We've got ethics. We do have some communications issues. We do have to continue to help our actuaries who are really a little more technically oriented in being able to present and convince and persuade. I think our FAC helps along those regards. So as far as universities go, I think the meetings we have with the university professors in the summer go a long way to connecting what the SOA is doing with what the professors are doing. We do have an employers' council where large employers of actuaries come and meet with the society twice a year. I think that's very relevant and productive, and we need to continue that. Thank you.
Tom, I'll yield the floor to Mike.
Thank you. How do we get employers motivated to engage individual actuaries, and how do we reach out to university students? Question. Interesting. My view is that the society is actually doing pretty much all it can do. This is more of a hygiene thing. We should continue doing it, but it shouldn't be necessarily our top priority in terms of the immediate future. But in any case, doing what we currently do with employers' councils, telling them about the value of our credentials, emphasizing the education rigorous education and professionalism of our members is key. And with universities, we do want to attract the best and the brightest. And there was a while, for example, where everybody wanted to just take a few exams and then go to Wall Street. But I think some of these things come in waves. And I think in the longer term, people recognize that there are different career paths, and completing your fellowship does add to your credentials and bring added value for your lifetime career.
Thank you, Mike. And now, Jim, it is your turn.
I was on the board when the Centers for Actuarial Excellence program was developed, and in fact that was one of the assignments that I was given as a board liaison. I think that's a very good program. I think we should continue to expand it. However, I think we should do a lot more than that. As everybody knows, or I think everybody knows, regulators have great difficulty getting financing to attend SOA meetings. And for that reason, regulators are allowed once per year to essentially attend with a very minor fee, almost what I'll call a spouse-level fee, so that they can justify going to more of these meetings and interact more with the society members. I think we should expand that out to the academic side of the world as well. I think we need to encourage the professors to come and interact with actuaries, to speak at our conferences, and to provide that type of financial subsidies that are necessary in order for them to interact more. I also think that we should be developing research projects, and that we should be doing them through co-development with professors who are in those specific areas. I know, as an example, the long-term care sponsored an expansive study between the SOA research department, the long-term care section, and Duke University, where $100,000 was allocated to develop a study of whether there's improvement in morbidity and mortality and how they interact in the long-term care space. This kind of research can have big impacts on the industries they address, and it also can draw the universities much more into participating with the society.
Thank you, Jim. Jerry, it is your turn.
I also agree that the Centers for Actuarial Excellence program is just a fantastic thing. The student summit they sponsor is wonderful. That brings a lot of young people together. Unfortunately, that only benefits a fairly small number of people. The faculty summit is another thing that comes out of that's very helpful. I think the CAE grants we give for specific research projects are important, as well as at beyond CAE schools, the Hickman Scholars, where we're supporting PhD candidates working on various actuarial research. I think that we do have an initiative underway to engage with members, particularly newer members, our student members. They're not members, our students, but much needs to be done. I think we need to reach out to high school students and to college students earlier in their career so they become aware of what our profession is, so they can get kind of a jump start both on exams, become aware of the importance of getting internships on their resumes. I do think most students do see the SOA as a real mystery, an ivory tower, and until they come to the APC and actually see an SOA employee, I think that undoes some of that mystery. But we need to do more to engage those candidates with either newsletters or information more than just the passing, failing, and registration for new exams. Certainly working with the Employers Council is a great way to reach out to employers and find out what they think we should be doing to get us closer to their candidates, and we can give them feedback on what they should be doing to get their actuarial students involved in the SOA. Finally, on regulators, I also think if we can get more of them in webinars. I had corresponded with a regulator this week with just going through the difficulty of getting reimbursed even for a $49 webinar to attend was just a major difficulty, and we need to explore other ways to get other people to our programs. Thank you.
Thank you, Jerry. The next question will go first to Mike. Mike, many of the SOA's core activities, ranging from pre-qualification education to professional development and research, are supported by over 2,000 member volunteers and 900 non-member volunteers. Yet some employers are restricting the time volunteers can dedicate to these activities. How will you encourage employers to maintain and possibly strengthen their employees' continued involvement in SOA volunteer activities?
Thank you, Craig. This is a difficult question. What's been happening in the employment world is that employers have been becoming very bottom-line focused, cost-conscious, and they really feel that they own the employee's time. So I think that's a narrow focus. It's short-termism. What we need to do is, again, through our outreach with employers, council, etc., we have to say that this is in your long-term benefit. If you allow people to volunteer and contribute to the profession, it's going to benefit both you and your employee, and you'll get a better employee back. And I think those who do volunteer and benefit from that experience should be going back and kind of like advertising and promoting themselves, saying, look, I learned communication skills, or I learned how to manage meetings, etc. Things that employers think that actuaries are not good at least initially. So if we can show that there is benefit to the employer, then I think that's the long-term solution.
Thank you, Mike. Now, Jim, it is your turn.
I believe that we can offer a lot of opportunities to get more volunteers involved and to get more companies behind having those volunteers involved. The two that are what I'll call the low-hanging fruit are the newer FSAs, who primarily get recruited into just volunteering to grade tests. I think that they could be provided with seminar training for communications, be encouraged to speak and write, and be provided with both recognition and with some reward, perhaps not having to pay their meeting fee so they can justify to their employer that they should be able to go when they speak at a meeting. Perhaps having the papers they write be recognized by the society back to the employer so the employer can see they're getting the benefit of a better employee. There's a second area that I think is probably even lower hanging fruit, and that is the actuaries who perhaps are of my generation, who seem to be dropping like flies as they retire. Most of them that I've been communicating with, for better or worse, I've been at this now for 4 years, and I've noticed each year as I try to contact all the people I know, more and more of them are retired. And when I talk to them, I ask them why they're not volunteering. A lot of them tell me, well, I've just dropped the membership because I just don't want to pay the $75. They don't have their employer pay it. Now, it's not that they can't afford it, they just don't want to do it. However, much more than that, what we need to be doing is we need to be giving them the recognition feedback, because I know many of them, and I know how actively involved they would be. And even if it's just a few hours a month that they're providing, they would happily do it if they got recognition, if they got invited to meetings, if they were participating in a way that allowed them to feel like they weren't wasting their time. We would get a lot more activity out of them. And of course, I think if we did training for the employers on what the employers were getting out of those volunteers and what it was bringing back to them, it would be a very big boost to volunteerism.
Thank you, Jim. And now it is time for Jerry to respond.
Thank you. This is a real problem. I personally felt it late in my career, that, of course, I was volunteering an awful lot of time, and I was having pushback from my employer, and I hear it from my volunteers that are taking vacation time to facilitate at FACS and things like that. We really need to convince employers just how much their employees get out of it. I know all my volunteer work, as much as I put into it, I got an awful lot more out of it than I ever put into it, and not just on the technical skills, but in all the other areas that get involved with working with lots of other people. I think we should promote these benefits even with simple things like articles in the Actuary, something on our website about trying to convince employers that their employees will get more out of it. They'll be better actuaries. They'll be more knowledgeable. They'll have a network. They'll know people they can reach out to as they have questions on things, and it's real valuable. We need to push the concept of the importance of volunteering at the Employers Council. And certainly we do get a lot of new FSAs at FACs. We bring in SOA staff someone comes through to explain the benefits of joining sections, the benefits of volunteering for the SOA, and I think that's paid off a lot in terms of getting a lot of people at kind of the right stage in their career to get involved with volunteering. I think the Outstanding Volunteer Recognition Program is a wonderful thing. It recognizes a handful of people each year, but over time, that's quite a large number of people that have been recognized. And I just think we need to do all we can to get as many new volunteers into the system, so there isn't quite so much pressure put on the ones that we do have. I see in education volunteers people that just put in inordinate amounts of time working for the profession and doing great work, but eventually they burn out. So we need to find ways to manage that. Thank you.
And Tom, you get final crack at this question.
Okay, after listening to the first three responses, it's hard to find something original here. I think I'm going to have to agree with what everybody has said. I think we need to sell to the employers why it's good for them to continue to let their people be volunteers. Why is it good for the company? That's the question. How does it help my shareholders? How does it help my policyholders? That's the kind of question they come back with. And we have to respond in those words. And I would take the approach that if they contribute to the research and contribute to the volunteer effort, they can help form it. There'll never be a surprise as to what comes out of it, and they can contribute to its creation. I would then also sell the fact that their employees who do volunteer will be better people for it. They'll learn strengths. They may even learn some things not to do as well, and they can do it not at their own career's expense, frankly, but in a volunteer mode. And maybe we won't get enough volunteers from the companies in the future. I do think we should tap the baby boomers. It's not too hard for even me to figure out an algorithm as to how to predict who's retiring from the society. And I think if we could contact those people as they drop off the rolls, harness them. I was fortunate to be able to do that with a good friend just this June, and frankly, it only took like 20 seconds in an email. I think there's a lot of talent out there amongst the boomers that we can harness for a win-win situation. Thank you.
Thank you, Tom. The next question will go to Jim. Jim, what do you believe are the most important personal leadership qualities needed to lead the SOA in the coming years, and how have you demonstrated those leadership qualities in your work and volunteer experience to date?
I think the most important leadership quality is leading by example. Rather than just parsing out work, or instead of just perhaps taking things that are prepared and going over them and coming out with a solution, you need to actually dig in and show everybody that this is an important project. I've done it numerous times in the long-term care space, from starting the long-term care section, which used to be part of the health section and often ignored, to starting the long-term care industry conference, to starting the survey of all the long-term care carriers. It's now published annually in the Broker World magazine, to doing lots of projects, even the one that I'm working on currently, which is the LTC section pricing study, which has been going on for about 18 months to mathematically show how safe and sound the long-term care premium levels are in today's new business environment compared with the rest of the world's view. In fact, one of the things that's coming out of that is that the media department is going to be putting together a paper that's going to be written by an outside professional writer and is going to start disseminating that information with the help of the long-term care section to the general media to try to help change the perception that's in the rating analyst's eyes, that's in the consumer eyes, and in the agent's eyes, that the products being sold today, rather than being so much safer than what was being sold 20 years ago, are actually going to have future rate increases 20 years from now because they're priced just as wrong now as they were 20 years ago. So I think in all of those different areas, the key to leadership is being willing to put in the time, the effort, and the emotional involvement in making sure that those things that need to be done are actually magnetically involving everybody.
Okay, thank you, Jim. Now it's on to Jerry.
Thanks, Craig. SOA president has to realize that he's really one vote. excuse me, one vote on the board, and he may have a greater voice on the board perhaps than others, but must recognize that your job is to really follow the collective wisdom of the board. Not the president's role to pick a pet project and push it through. Just that sort of thing just leads to short-term planning. Every year the SOA is going in a different direction in response to what that president wants to do, and that's just no way to run an organization. It needs the short-term thinking and not long-term planning. To be president of the SOA, you need to be really think strategically, think of the big picture, to leave the details to staff, small things that really don't involve presidential level of input, and know when and where to leave the work to others, so when to delegate to others. Executive leadership is essential. Executive experience is essential. Certainly being very aware of the industry, of the business we operate in is important. And I think most important of all in leadership is to be a great communicator. And I'd like to remind people that listening is really one of the greatest parts of communicating. And you really, to lead this organization, you're going to need to be a wonderful communicator. And finally, I think to do well, you're just going to have to put your heart and soul into the SOA for several years over the term of your experience, from the president-elect year through the president year through the past president year. Thank you.
Thank you, Jerry. Now it's on to Tom.
Thank you. I think the most important facet for the president-elect coming up will be the ability to perform, to deliver performance. We have to avoid studying things forever. We have to avoid kicking the can down the road. We have to avoid getting spread too thin. I, if elected, would beg to the leadership team that we change an approach a bit so we don't have 3 years worth of inchworm assignments, but identify things, difficult things, that will take more than a year, maybe 2 years, maybe 3 years, and have the same person focused on delivering results within that time. I think we might be able to achieve more if we could have the same person working on these challenging issues for a longer period of time. To do that, I would also spread responsibilities to other directors, deputize others to give speeches, help the president-elect focus on the key tough issues and have the time to do it. My experiences, I have been able to convince and persuade people over my career. I have to be careful to not focus on what I'm saying, but watching and looking at the person and seeing what they are hearing. A couple examples. I've been the solvency chair at the Academy, and that's a very challenging role. You've got people from the health, life, and pension, and P&C practices trying to come up with a common position. That was amazingly difficult to corral those strong personalities into one position statement. Another example is at the IAA meeting. Issues will often be presented and debated as North America versus Europe. It's like one continent against another continent. However, there's only two key players. Here, in this side, 20 there, it's like 5 on 20. So you learn how to deal with that situation. Thank you.
Thank you, Tom. Now on to Mike.
During my career, I found that the most effective leadership style is to be collegial and collaborative, and because this engenders mutual trust and respect. When we look at the SOA and others, implementing an organization's strategy is a complex undertaking involving efforts by literally hundreds of people. Leadership means choosing one's priorities and managing the organization in such a way as to ensure a diverse group with different skills and backgrounds, like the SOA, work together toward a common goal. Effective leaders are those who can put themselves in the shoes of others, those who can understand different positions and seek win-win solutions, but nevertheless are able to show firmness of resolve in defending core SOA values. As SOA leader, I will seek out members' views, I will respond to their concerns, I will contribute to and clearly communicate the organization's strategic direction. And in my interactions with the board, prior to bringing any matter to a vote, I will seek the counsel of others, other board members, respected colleagues, and experts. I plan to use my collaborative skills to build alliances and to find common ground.
Thank you, Mike. We now have time for one final question, which will go to Jerry first. Jerry, what do you see as the greatest opportunities for expanding the type of work that actuaries do, and what can the SOA do to create and exploit those opportunities?
I think one of the greatest areas of would be in the use of predictive modeling and data analytics. This is an area where actuaries do have expertise. I think this can create a lot of great opportunities really across all practice areas, whether it's in health insurance and managing, or general insurance for that matter, and managing claim costs. As principles-based reserves comes down the line, I think there'll be applications for it as well. What was the second part of the question, Craig? Sorry. Tough going first.
What can the SOA do to help create and exploit these opportunities?
Okay. What the SOA can and should do would be to have continuing education, increase continuing education in all these areas, making sure that we have the right basic education through our ASA and FSA tracks, and particularly supporting it, as I mentioned, with continuing education. Research and development would be, research in particular would be something that would be most helpful. It's a skill we have, it's a capability we have, and it's something we should exploit to advance practice areas in those new areas. Thank you.
Thank you, Jerry. Now it's on to Tom.
Sure. Expanding opportunities for actuaries. Well, we all know we have the mathematical skills. We bring ethics to the table. There's really nobody better positioned than to evaluate the sustainability of an operation. And I think wherever sustainability is needed, that's where actuaries can step in. Prior to last year, you can look at our library, and it's littered with studies about how we can move forward, and really more or less like how we can't move forward. But starting a year and a half ago, we've taken strong steps to actually expand what actuaries are doing. We've got an internship program where we're placing college juniors into roles and where they, in professions, in companies where they otherwise would not have been employed. We've identified several areas where we could expand and are trying to expand right now. We've actually got a person on staff and working on budgeting to get more people on staff, people who pick up the phone, talk to employers, and actually get a plane ticket and start at one end of the city and go to the other to sell the benefits of employing actuaries. And I think we've got to hit the road, hit the pavement, and do that intensely for the next 3 years. Thank you.
Thank you, Tom. Mike, it is now your turn.
Greatest opportunities. Well, it's difficult to know all the areas where we should be focusing on. Social and financial challenges come and go, and so it's really difficult to know what the future holds. One thing we can do is be prepared for it and respond accordingly. So looking at the present and what we know, the knowable opportunities, I would say the greatest opportunities are in a few areas. For example, predictive modeling and data analytics. And I commend the SOA on starting an intern project with employers that are active in this field. And these are not just traditional employers, but employers that are not in the pension or the insurance area. Another opportunity is climate change. I'm not going to argue whether there is or is not climate change, but in terms of understanding the mass of climate change and the volatility, we can provide a lot of expertise and advice. And we have been doing so, working with the CIA and the Casualty Society. ERM is another area that hasn't gone away. We have joint risk management seminars and ERM symposiums, and I think that should continue. And then, lastly, I would say, even in our traditional areas, the old pension, retirement, and insurance, that's not dead. There are new countries that are opening up and providing opportunities. For example, in the recent memorandum of understanding with the Chinese Actuarial Association, we're having talks on how we could do, together with them and an industry association, joint studies on the China retirement market, which, given their one-child policy, is going to hit them very rapidly and very soon. And I think we have a lot to contribute there.
Thank you, Mike. Jim, you have the opportunity for the final response.
Thank you. I think that many of the things we've talked about already are things that we should really focus on. First of all, I think we need to focus on getting more actuaries involved with more non-actuaries. I think that there are already actuaries seated in lots of different industries, and by using them and getting other actuaries to participate with the non-actuaries in those other professions, we'll get more recognition. Second, I think we have a chance through every section where all the experts reside in their little segment areas to get those messages out through the traditional media rather than just focusing on the projects within the current insurance and pension industries. Third, I think that we should be working with the actuaries who have in some way or another taken on entrepreneurial roles. Those are the ones who will have the best ideas for ways actuaries can operate in new and different areas. And I think we can each actually perhaps support some of the actuaries who are in these other areas, bring content and continuing education from other industries and other conferences back to us. Although I'm not sure where the opportunities are, I can think of an example that many, many industries are currently hoarding cash. And we have investment sections, we have other types of areas where perhaps those actuaries should be reaching out to those other industries and suggesting things that they should be doing that are more efficient than what they are doing currently.
Thank you, Jim. That's just about all the time we have for the webinar. One final reminder, the elections for the Board of Directors and Section Councils will open on August 17th and close on September 4th. Thanks very much to the 4 candidates and to all of the members who participated in this webinar. I believe it will help you to make an informed decision when you vote. Of course, there's additional information about all the candidates on the SOA Board election section of the website. You'll also be receiving emails from the candidates, I imagine, and I'm sure they'd all be happy to hear from you with questions you may want to address to them directly. Thank you again, everyone, and we are now adjourned.